This is Renford Rewatched. I'm joined by Carl once again to discuss another episode of the Renford Rejects. This one, Just the Ticket, Series 1, Episode 10. Here's the synopsis. The Rejects all try to find favour with Jason when he claims to have an extra ticket for a match between Manchester United and Liverpool. Meanwhile, Eddie helps Stewart and Robin rehearse for a school production of Romeo and Juliet. It was written by Patrick Buckley with script editor Chris Wilson. And for this one, it's just the main cast. There are no guest stars. So to start our discussion, Carl, what do you think of this episode overall?
It struck me as very much another one of those kind of filler episodes. I mean, we're still in season 1 at this point, aren't we? So yeah. This is kind of is this the second of the more Jason-centric episodes, perhaps?
Yes.
That we've seen. As a story, was a bit flat, but it kind of had all the characters in all the time, all interacting with Jason at the same time. And I suppose from the beginning, he was kind of, would you consider him to be the main? I mean, it's an ensemble piece, but you might consider Jason to kind of be the main character of Renford Rejects, maybe, if you were to single somebody out.
To a point,
perhaps.
Yeah.
I think he's first in the opening credits, isn't he? And he does the ball kick during the title card sequence.
Yeah.
There is some slight. There is a greater emphasis on him than some of the other characters a lot of the time.
Indeed. And in this episode, I agree with you. It is very filler. Initially, I've watched this episode twice in the last 24 hours, and the first time I just went, I don't think there's any notes I can put down here. Yeah, it didn't really stand out because it felt very much like they were fitting into the formula that had already been set up. One of the rejects has a problem, and they all try and find a way individually of fixing it. Only this time, the person with the problem was Jason, trying to find a person to go to the football match with. And then there was the B story, which just seemed like an opportunity for more comedic stuff from Eddie. That was just my thoughts on it. Now, the first scene, they start talking about Jason's lies, because he does have a talent as a character for spinning a yarn.
I think we all probably knew someone like that at school, who was kind of full of tall tales, and I don't know, maybe their uncle worked for Nintendo or something along those lines. And you, at the back of your mind, you like kind of maybe wanted them to be telling the truth because it sounded very exciting. But at the end, it always turned out that they were just kind of full of it.
And Jason is definitely the representative of that. It's established fairly early that he's got tickets for this match between Manchester United and Liverpool. We've asked before, like, where is this supposed to be set? And in my question for this episode, where is that football match being played?
Yeah, I mean, I can understand, as we'll look at later, I can understand Eddie getting there in his car. But you'd imagine a friendly between Liverpool and, I mean, it's filmed during the summer, so I suppose we're assuming it's a friendly match rather than a league game. I suppose it's nice 25 years later that a Liverpool-Manchester United match is still a big ticket fixture. I can't imagine that a couple of, like, what's supposed to be 15, 16-year-olds jumping on a train and going all the way up to Manchester to watch a match, having the money to do that at that particular time. In fact, it's during the school term, isn't it? So we can assume it is a league game. I'm not entirely sure how that would have worked, to be honest, especially as it's on a weeknight, not at the weekend.
Well, I mean, the twist at the end, I think, explained it.
I quite like that, to be honest. And there was some nice. There was a nice joke at the beginning that I picked up about one of Jason's lies, saying that Liverpool scouts had come to watch him play, but it turned out to be a Boy Scout group from Liverpool that was in the park at the time.
Yeah, that was pretty cool.
Which was quite amusing.
Indeed. After the credit sequence, we have VTV again with Vinny. That's kind of a regular thing. It's what they do. And he kind of always comes on and tells you what the focus of the episode is. And of course, who's going to get these tickets. And then we have a bit of a deviation to the B story, which is Eddie advising Robin and Stewart on Romeo and Juliet, which it's played for laughs, really, isn't it?
I mean, it's not the greatest B plot, but as we'll probably talk about near the end, there is a pretty great payoff at the end of the episode when they flip it around. And I think that, I mean, it may have been something that was originally planned, but after Robin leaves at the end of season one, they probably scrapped the idea. But I always got the idea that there was perhaps an untold romance between Stewart and Robin. He was obviously the most mature of the team. He kind of plays down the posh accent stereotype after a couple of episodes from what we see at the very beginning into Matthew Leach's just the natural way that he talks. We kind of imagine that of all the boys in the team, I mean, we don't necessarily have to have a romantic attachment for a female character, but when this was made, that was almost kind of part and parcel. And so I always imagined that Stewart was the one that the writers were perhaps lining up to be her boyfriend at some point in the future. But obviously she leaves at the end of season one, and that's something that never happened.
And of course, as characters, they always interline in terms of the narrative, because the others will get carried away with something. And it's always Stewart and Robin that are like, wait a minute, this is ridiculous. And so, yeah, you're probably right there that they were kind of lining them up for that. And this is possibly could have been the start of that.
Yeah, like you say, it's Romeo and Juliet. I suppose it doesn't get any more obvious.
Yeah, as well as trying to keep them away from the main narrative, because you imagine if they added 2 extra things. I mean, why would Stewart doesn't seem like the kind of person that would try and find favour, try and bribe Jason. He's just kind of doing his own thing.
I just assume that because he's a Chelsea fan, he has no interest in Liverpool or Manchester United as a fixture.
That's a good point. That is a good point. I need to point out this reference that I had to look up, because as Eddie is advising Stewart and Robin about this scene and using a lot of Elvis references, I got all those, but Priscilla calls him Stanislavski. And I thought, what is that in reference to? At first, I thought it was a reference to the Lasky players from Paramount from the early 20th century. Stanislavski, his last name, was actually a Soviet-Russian theatre practitioner. So he was an actor and director. So that is a really kind of niche reference. He was born in 1863 and died in 1938. Wow. So that is such I love these kind of almost nerdy references when it comes to that, because you'd expect, something else, something perhaps a little bit more modern. So I just wanted to point that out, because that is one of the things I love about this show, is sometimes the very obscure references that get into the script.
Yeah, it reminds me of, I think we've discussed this in the past during one of the Ben episodes, where he brings up the Russian goalkeeper, whose name I always forget, who won the Ballon d'Or, the only goalkeeper to ever win the Ballon d'Or, that I think you'd looked up at that particular time. I had no idea who he was. So yeah, maybe someone on the writing team is a fan of Russian football and Russian theatre.
Perhaps so. We need to point out that in this scene overall, Robin is not a fan of Juliet.
No, I like the way that she kind of takes it apart a little bit later on. Certainly when this was on, I was studying Shakespeare at school, and most kids don't particularly enjoy. I mean, Shakespeare is an important thing to study, but most kids don't necessarily enjoy studying Shakespeare. And so for her to kind of turn around and start poking holes in it and saying, well, she should have just done this, or she should have just done this, and then actually flipping the script towards the end, ironically towards a more traditional thing, because back then the men played the female parts as well as the male parts. I thought that was quite amusing, actually.
Do you think, and this is a slight deviation, but I heard something about this recently, do you think that Shakespeare is more appreciated when it's heard rather than when it's read?
Yeah, I think so because you can see what's happening. Baz Luhrmann's Romeo and Juliet movie. Even if you have absolutely no idea what the characters are actually saying because they're reading the original Shakespearean script, which in a modern parlance is quite difficult to follow, you can still follow along with the story because you can clearly see that people don't like each other and they're fighting and things like that. I love that movie. I think the way that he translates the original Shakespeare into the 20th century is fantastic. And that came out the year I was studying Romeo and Juliet at school. So we kind of, a big bunch of us kind of went to the cinema to watch it. And we were in awe at the fact that they'd replaced all the swords with gunfights and made it more like a John Woo movie.
I've seen the play on stage, a traditional telling of it, as well as that movie, and they both have their pluses and minuses. I think, as long as the dialogue is intact, I think.
Definitely. I was 14, 15. So all the movies I wanted to watch involved gunfights at that point in time. As I've got older, I'd probably be a lot more appreciative of seeing Romeo and Juliet on the stage done as it originally was rather than that particular version of it. But both have a place.
I think as well with Robin kind of questioning the roles and of course the role reversal that happens at the end. I mean, 96, 97 is just when the Spice Girls are starting to hit sort of that idea of girl power.
And she's very much she's a very powerful female character from the first episode, isn't she? She's obviously much better at football than the other characters. She's a lot more mature than everybody apart from Stewart. Although, as we've sort of looked at previously, she still has her own psychological problems, as they do. But yeah, she's certainly a trailblazer of a character in any sense, but certainly within the context of a TV show aimed at sort of older children / teenagers of that particular era. I think it has a much, like you say, a much stronger meaning than perhaps it would now.
Perhaps so. Let's wrap up the B story a little bit. So there's a few observations I've got, such as Stewart's wig in that first time we see them rehearsing.
He reminded me of, have you ever seen Spaceballs?
No, I haven't. Should I?
Oh, okay. There's a character in Spaceballs called Prince Valium, who's this very boring Yuan-Sun prince, and he has a terrible sort of blonde fop wig, much like Stewart's.
The line that Stewart and Eddie kind of say there is that it was the way it was meant to be, as in you can't sort of reinterpret the play. But as we've already talked about, the play has already been reinterpreted in many different ways.
Exactly. And I think, Robin's ultimate goal is to switch the actors around rather than the script. So she doesn't play Juliet in any different way to the original Shakespeare. She just decides that she'd rather be Romeo and see Stewart as Juliet instead, which, I thought was probably easily the funniest part of that entire episode was seeing Stewart dressed up as Juliet.
Because he's really good at it.
Yeah, well, that's it. He's obviously a very talented actor, and he sells it as well. He's not kind of stood there feeling embarrassed or anything like that. He puts himself, he acts the part almost like he is on stage doing Shakespeare.
Eddie seems to be directing them. Who is the director of this school production?
Well, indeed. You'd like to imagine that maybe the school director has told them that their chemistry isn't great, so they've asked Eddie to coach them a little bit more because he's like the only adult they really know that's not their parents. And he has a successful marriage as far as they see. So they've perhaps asked him to give them some pointers on how to improve their on-stage chemistry between each other outside of the regular drama class lunchtime rehearsals.
And unfortunately, the way that he uses language isn't always the clearest to them. I particularly like the use of the phrase, she deep sixed herself, which means destroy. in American slang.
Yeah, he's still very much in the Elvis stage at this point, isn't he? Which, whilst they tone down as the series goes on, it's still there, but he doesn't constantly speak in Elvis-themed puns.
No, it becomes a little less caricature-y as we go on. I'm very interested, actually. I haven't seen series 2 for a while, and we're a few episodes away from it, and I'm interested to see what the changes will be once we get there. Let's go back to the A story, where, as I said, the formula that they've already established in previous episodes is very much in full swing, because now what we get is a series of sequences very cleverly sewn together of people basically trying to curry favour with Jason. And we start off with who's the first one?
Robin, I think.
It's Robin, yeah.
Kind of almost agrees to go out with him on the date to the football.
Yes, because I got very confused, because it was like, is she still rehearsing, or what's the thing there? It was a little bit confusing coming from the previous scene into that.
Yeah, no, she's definitely what's the word? Although she perhaps doesn't want to be seen as Juliet in the play, she seemed quite happy to take advantage of the fact that she's a woman to perhaps get those tickets off Jason, who is a teenage boy with eyes.
Well, indeed. Is there an irony there?
A little bit, but then she's, again, argue a powerful enough character within the context of the show to actually pull that off without it seeming like it was out of character.
Yeah.
I mean, she doesn't really string any of the boys along at any point during the... None of the female characters ever string any of the boys along at any point in the 4 seasons of the show. So it's probably the closest we actually get to anything like that.
The next person to try and persuade him is Vinny, who shows him his greatest goals on that little screen.
I was quite impressed at the tech he had, to be honest. That little screen that played those little tapes, that couldn't have been cheap stuff to obtain back then.
Well, no, but Vinny has all the gear, that's already been established.
Yeah, he's that pro. He's the world's first YouTuber. It could be argued.
Indeed. And of course, we have the one thing I've noticed when watching this show is that the music plays a very big part in the characterization. And we always get, whenever Jason goes off on a sort of monologue, we always get that doop, 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 doop music. And that kind of shows that we're looking at it completely from his point of view, almost like he's going off the rails here.
I enjoyed the use of the camera work as well, where during those particular scenes you had the camera sort of affixed to Jason's head, so you could only see like his expressions and things like that, as if to say he's lost in his own little world of, look how great I am, I'm the world's best footballer. Well, clearly not.
Which we later see in a scene we're about to talk about. But one of my favourite lines in this, and it kind of comes out of nowhere, is when he kind of agrees with Vinny, even though at this point he's still kind of lost. And that's the thing, they kind of blindside him with something and he just says yes. But the line when Eddie comes over and he just says, "Too much football drives a man insane," in that sort of Elvis way. And it just sort of came out of nowhere. But, I thought it was funny.
It was good delivery. I mean, at the beginning, Jason was just like, he was quite modest, wasn't he? He's like, it was just a tap in, but Vinny's actually kind of really playing it as if to say, no, I'm not going to tap him, but, you've got to be in a good midfielder's got to be in the right place at the right time to be able to tap that in. That shows skill. And he's like, oh, yeah, you're really right there.
A little bit of manipulation.
Mm.
And, of course, the next person to try is Bruno, who offers his bike, but only for 1 week.
It was nice to see some shots of what is, in inverted commas, Renford for a change, rather than the cafe or the park.
Yes, there is a lot more of that in this episode, sort of where you feel like they've just gone somewhere and it's very, very fly on the wall. Because you can hear like crowds in the background or just people walking by.
Yes. I mean, I've been around there before. It's Willesden in London. And yeah, that kind of whole estate was kind of almost built at the same time post-war. All the houses look almost identical to each other. I suppose maybe they tried to find the most generic suburban area of London that they possibly could, so that the people up and down the country watching it could relate it to their local area and their local park the most.
That makes sense because, like you say, it does look fairly generic. It's just Renford, which could be anywhere. Obviously, we see Jason on Bruno's bike, and I love the way that Bruno sort of breaks character a little bit. He goes back to Barry Grade slightly, but without the Birmingham accent. It's not quite as heightened.
Yeah, I noticed that as well.
Yeah. And of course, like you said earlier, we see a shot of Jason's face as he's riding, again with that music in the background.
Yes, very much full of himself, or perhaps convinced that. We don't know whether or not he's. Later on, he sort of makes them all feel very guilty for playing him, but we don't know if he's also playing them, if he's aware of the fact that perhaps he's got these tickets and he can get something out of all of his friends to teach them a lesson, but also to get something out of all of his friends.
Yeah, you do wonder on the motivation, because he does seem he comes across in this episode like he doesn't really know what's happening, but you do wonder whether he's a little bit more intelligent at times than he lets on.
I think so. I don't think he's quite the fool he's made out to be at times.
And like you said, Ronnie gives him a jacket, which he says is very expensive. I wonder, is it just generic, or are they playing there?
I honestly could not tell you. I was not a very fashionable person when I was a teenager, so I am the wrong person to ask about that one. But yeah, as I was saying earlier, this entire Ronnie is very one-dimensional character. They don't really. I don't even think they ever have an episode that's about Ronnie. They have one on the others.
They have one where he doesn't have any money and he has to pay people.
Yes.
And they've tried to flesh it out there, but I do admit with you that the rest of the series, he does seem very one-dimensional. And actually, the best thing about that scene in particular was not Ronnie at all. It was Jason breaking character for a moment. Did you see that?
I don't think I picked up on that one, no.
As he's putting the jacket on, there's obviously just people walking by. It must just be a street rather than extras. And he sort of puts the jacket on, and you see him just for a moment, like, click and make eye contact with somebody, almost like to go, look at this jacket sort of thing. And then he snaps back into character. It's like a split second, but it's there.
That's the I think that's the main strip of shops leading up to the Gracelands Cafe that they're walking up, that we see quite a lot of as the time goes on.
So that would have just been an ordinary street that they were filming on, because that's what it felt like, because you could hear background people talking and stuff. And I think at one point you see 3 people walk by and you hear a mention of something that sounds like camera. And then you see the lady looking back straight into the lens as they're doing the scene.
That's it. I mean, quite frequently in a lot of those old shows, they would perhaps film at a distance, and then they would get the actors to dub over exactly what they said in the studio and then put it back over the footage. So they kind of almost they haven't got to pay a load of extras to be in the background. They've just got members of the public walking past who perhaps just assume that it's a couple of teenagers from the local area who are walking down the road, who are being shot from a fairly long way away with a zoom lens, perhaps.
I mean, yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if ADR was involved there somewhere. After that, I love how everyone else is giving him material possessions. Ben just gives him a poem.
I don't think there's any other way they could have played the Ben one, to be honest. And yet the poem is about Jason and the Argonauts, isn't it?
Yes.
I didn't. He jokes about not understanding it about astronauts, doesn't he?
Yes, indeed. I must say at the time, I probably wouldn't have understood that reference either.
Perhaps we do give Jason too much credit about knowing what's going on.
Well, it does always seem to be Ben. When Ben says something and Jason's always like, you what?
Yes, he's, definitely I wouldn't even say he's the smartest character. Perhaps he's played as supposed to be the most well-read, shall we say. rather than the smartest.
But he still has the naivety of a teenager.
Yes, he thinks that he's a half-decent goalkeeper, for one thing.
Yes, well, that's been disproven many a time. The conclusion to this story is basically Robin walks in, says, "What about the match?" or whatever. And there's like this really long shot and long scene where, of course, we're in this show. They don't cut around, do they? There's like one camera following them, and it kind of maneuvers round so beautifully as they're like basically tussling with each other.
A lot of it's done in very long takes, isn't it? So they would have had to, one person gets their line wrong 5 minutes into it, right back to the beginning and start again.
I love the way, though, that Bruno often pops up in a scene. And
just pops his head up and then pops back down again.
And you see him do that in this, and then they start pushing him out of the way. It's so cleverly done because we start off we almost take as a viewer a 90-degree journey where we're on one side of the cafe, and then suddenly by the end of it we're on the other, where Eddie and Priscilla walk by to go out of the door.
Well, I like that we've definitely ascertained that the thing Jason cares about the most is his stomach, and also that he's done a nice thing for Eddie, hasn't he? At the end of the day, he's not asked him if he can go with Jason. He's asked him for both tickets, and Jason's been nice enough to give him both tickets because, maybe he only got the tickets because he wanted to try and get one over on his friends or show them up for the kind of being a bit shallow to him rather than being respectful.
Yeah.
Because he was obviously aware that it was a reserves game, but he never tells them that. He's only ever says it's Liverpool versus Manchester United.
Well, even when he's showing them the ticket.
But he doesn't tell Eddie either.
No, even when he's showing them the ticket, though, he's being very coy about it. He's not letting them see the full deal.
Yes, he's quite cunning when he wants to be.
Indeed. So we have the scene where, as you said earlier, he tries to kind of get one over on them. He's telling them like how selfish they've been. And then we have this moment where they're just kind of stood in the street and you hear this car noise coming up. And it's almost like a gradual tension. And then we have Eddie and Priscilla driving up in this car, and they let out the fact that it was a reserves match. Now, tell me, if in the 90s you were offered the opportunity to go to a reserves match, would you think it was a negative deal?
I'd still consider it a positive, even if I was one of only two people in the crowd watching the game. It still would have been an experience. You wouldn't grumble that you were the only two people there. You might actually say, we were the only two people there. It was great. You wouldn't expect a stadium full of people for a reserves game at all.
Do you think perhaps what's happened is it's because they were sold a certain thing and so it's not what they expected?
Possibly. I mean, Jason not telling Eddie that it's a reserves match, but then would Eddie have figured it out? Like you say, would have said on the tickets that it's a reserve game. The fact that the match clearly wasn't in Manchester. There's no way he drove to Manchester to watch a football match and drove back again in the same afternoon. And he also seemingly leaves Jason in charge of the cafe, which was, because no one else works there apart from Eddie and his wife.
Well, you said the kitchen's open, and I'm like, well, who's using no health and safety in those days? Who's using the equipment?
Yeah, where's your hygiene? I left the back door open. Who knows what sort of wild animals have wandered in off the streets. I think his friends would have forgiven him when he offered them all free food. They're all teenagers. They all think with their stomachs. And I think they would have, when he had that big plate of chips, but all the other food as well, he'd have gone, because he offers them a chip, doesn't he? I think they'd have gone, you're all right. And then forgiven him.
Yes, indeed. So the last scene is them playing a match between Renford Rejects and Mr. Patel's Paper Boys. I love how they haven't gone like the 5 such and such or the Renford Robots, or they've gone for something else.
It could actually be a 5-a-side team in a youth league, couldn't it? It's more realistic.
Yes, it's like they haven't really gone for a joke there.
No, but they ignore Jason for the entire match, which is, can you ignore a player in a 5-a-side game? That's 20% of your team.
Well, the rejects can. It's just what happens.
Yeah. Plus, they wouldn't have. Did they win at the end of the game?
I'm not sure.
I can't remember.
I think they're excited at the end of the game, but they'd still just continue. But I must give it to Martin Delaney, the shouting, because the way that they filmed it, it was just kind of off the hoof. And for all that, Ben, Ben, Ben,
Yeah.
and it's like the amount of charge that's in his delivery just makes it funny.
What I thought was unfortunate that Terry wasn't in this episode. It would have been quite funny to see what Terry would have offered him in exchange for a ticket to watch the match.
Well, I guess the thing with Terry is he almost comes with too much baggage. And so there would have been threats of being beaten up and stuff, and perhaps they didn't need that in the narrative.
No, and the ending would have just been Jason running away from Terry because, Terry didn't get what he wanted either.
And I guess they've already did that once or twice with the Ronnie story. Of being promised something and not getting it, and then being happy at them singing "Always Look on the Bright Side of Life" at the end. So yeah, I think that's probably already been covered, but that is something that they could have done, certainly.
And then at the very end, it turns out he didn't learn his lesson at all, and he's still telling them porkies about various things, isn't he?
Yes, I think that's perhaps that's a very much a sitcom trope. It's like, well, we've just restarted. No one's learnt anything.
Yeah.
Indeed. So that is our episode. Like we said at the top of the podcast, this was quite a dull one, really. Like, it has its moments. There are some moments in there that were very funny, but it's not the strongest in terms of story.
No, and I think, definitely a filler episode, and also definitely something that they probably just kind of, they had an order for 12 episodes, is it, this season 1?
13.
13. And most certainly British TV shows were like 6 episodes at that point, weren't they? So to find the material to fill 12, 13 episodes would have been quite difficult. But again, props to the writers for kind of, although the characters are very cartoonish, there is still an element of realism in their portrayals. They are believable as a group of friends, most certainly. And I think there is still a lot of it that's very relatable for kids who were watching it at the time. But also you can look back and go, oh yeah, I had a friend like that. And that, we used to play football for a team, or we were having a kick around down the park, and you knew some kid like Terry Stoker who was overly rough with everybody and a bit of a bully and things like that. So whilst they are perhaps stereotypes, they are true to life stereotypes because, we all knew someone who thought that they were the best footballer in the world, but actually were not very good at all, and so on and so forth.
So essentially, even in filler episodes, they still manage to be relatable. And the thing is, we're calling it a filler episode. That is our opinion. But some people, this might be their favourite episode for some reason, usually for references or a particular line or a moment. I mean, the match at the end is pretty memorable. It's one of those where it's like one thing is out of place, and so the match goes completely awry. So, yeah, I'm sure it is somebody's favourite. I wonder whether this in the timeline happens before or after they go to QPR.
That's true, because he would have said, oh, I've got an extra ticket to QPR, and they'd have gone, oh yeah, QPR reserves game.
Yeah.
They wouldn't have believed him, would they?
No.
But the most memorable thing, I think, is actually the B plot in this episode. Certainly the Stewart and Robin, Romeo and Juliet dalliance was perhaps the more memorable side of it.
Do you think they could have fleshed that out more, or do you think it was played perfectly?
I think it was played perfectly well. They don't give, Stewart doesn't ask Jason for a ticket at any point. And I suppose it's perhaps difficult to see, maybe Stewart could have offered to play him up front instead of Robin for a week or something like that, in exchange for a ticket. But I suppose with the running time, they only had so much space to fit the characters in. So yeah, plus they always need a B plot of some description.
Yeah, gave it a sense of variety. So, yeah, we've reached the end of this episode. Thank you so much, Carl, for being on this one.
That's all right.
The next episode will be Series 1, Episode 11, which is Ciao Bambino, and I'll be joined by Luke for that one. So thank you very much for listening. Bye-bye for now.